Hello everyone, today we are going to be seeing how fast Sableye can beat Pokemon Omega Ruby in a solo run challenge. This will be the first edited Pokemon Omega Ruby solo run on the channel. I've done a live stream of it before, and I did a race with Sparks the Nico with Cincino, but yeah, let's get started with this run. To be honest, I have no idea why I chose Sableye for this. I think it's just because Sableye and Mawile are version exclusives and they originated in the Hoenn region, which is why today I'm doing Sableye and the next one will be Mawile. But Sableye I was very nervous on at first, until I looked at its moveset. So while I go through the early routes, which are mostly the same if you've seen my Pokemon Emerald or Pokemon Sapphire solo runs, the early game's mostly the same. So while this goes on, let's talk about what kind of Pokemon Sableye is. Our stats are not that great. We have 50 HP, 75 attack, 75 defense, 65 in the specials, and 50 speed. We are very slow. We do somewhat sort of hit hard, but with everything being low, I had really low hopes. I mean, at least we're in the medium slow experience group, which if you don't know, in the early game is actually one of the best experience growth rates because until you hit level 30, you actually level up faster than every other experience group with the exception of the fluctuating group, because the fluctuating group is just weird. But however, a good XP group and pretty horrible stats can be made up for with a good moveset. And if you look at our moveset, we start with Leer, Scratch, and Foresight. Foresight does not allow ghost moves to hit normal types, it only allows normal and fighting types to hit ghosts. So for a Sableye, this move is completely useless. And then throughout level up, we get Nightshade at level 6, and then Astonish, Fury Swipes, Detect, Shadow Sneak, Feint Attack, Fake Out, Punishment, Knockoff, Shadow Claw, Confuse Ray, Zen Headbutt, Power Gem, Shadow Ball, Foul Play, Gouache, and Mean Look. Generation 5 and 6 was the point where Pokemon started getting very big level up movesets, and I'm all completely for it. The best moves I can see here by level up are Nightshade, Shadow Sneak, Feint Attack, Knockoff, Shadow Claw, Zen Headbutt, Power Gem, and Shadow Ball. Shadow Sneak will be really good because it is a priority move, so it'll ignore our low speed, and Feint Attack is just going to be a decently powerful same type attack bonus dark move. And we get Shadow Claw at 29 too, but until then, Shadow Sneak will be just fine. But the reason I say Nightshade's also really good is because this is going to be our key to beating the first gym leader, Roxanne. Her Pokemon are extremely defensive, and having a set damage move is a really good way to beat her if you don't have a super effective move. And we also have a huge TM learn set too. Just to save time, I'm only going to go over TMs that I've either teach during this run or I've thought of teaching. The great TMs we get access to are Hone Claws, Calm Mind, Hidden Power, Return, Dig, Psychic, Shadow Ball, Brick Break, Rock Tomb, Aerial Ace, Incinerate, Shadow Claw, Retaliate, Substitute, Secret Power, Dark Pulse, Power Up Punch, Dazzling Gleam. If you look on the overlay, you can see the TM sets kinda squished, but I didn't really want to leave out TMs that we're not going to use anyway, because I feel like you all should know the entire moveset. It is going to look a bit ugly, but oh well, you can deal with it, right? And also, if you look on the overlay, I have 3 things on the gameplay. I have my nature, ability, and my hidden power typing. We have the Jolly nature, which is plus speed and minus special attack, so I feel like that's the best nature overall because of how slow we were. I've done 2 playthroughs before this. Mainly the first one was just to de-rust in this game, and I had a lot of problems in the mid-game with basic opponents outspeeding me. And then our ability is Keen Eye. We have 2 other abilities, Prankster as our hidden ability, and our other second ability is Stall. Stall is a really awful move. For some reason, it always lets you move second. I have no idea why this could possibly be useful. And Prankster, I didn't really think it was going to help that much. Prankster gives priority to status moves. So if I had, like, I don't know, Double Team or something like that, it would always go first, but I really could not find a use for this, so I just stuck to Keen Eye. Being able to avoid Sand Attack is a good bonus. And our hidden power typing is Hidden Power Ice. Hidden Power Ice is generally a very good hidden power typing for the Hoenn games, especially if you don't have a solution to the 4th Elite 4-member Drake who spams dragon types. In the early game, before I take on Roxanne, I fight most of the optional trainers in the Petalburg Forest and in the surrounding area, and then I eventually get to Rustboro City. Normally, if I need more training, I can head straight to the Rustboro Tunnel to fight more trainers, but with Nightshade, I don't really think that's going to be necessary, so why don't we go in and fight the first gym leader. If you're more familiar with Pokemon Emerald runs, you'll notice right away that she only has one Geodude and one Nosepass instead of two Geodude. Most of these gym leaders have their teams from Ruby and Sapphire with one exception. So Roxanne originally only had one Geodude and a Nosepass. It was kinda like Brock's team in Gen 1 with only one Geodude. It was Emerald that added two. But the main plan here overall is to spam Nightshade on her two Pokemon for fixed damage, but on my first attempt here, I actually realized I should have healed before doing this because I only had 4 Nightshades going into this fight, and after realizing this, I take a reset, go back and heal, and try again. And when I come back, I'm actually able to beat Roxanne really easy, and I get a split time of 10 minutes and 40 seconds. This could have been sub 10 if I had preserved my Nightshade power points a bit better, but oh well. And now that we're going to Rustboro Tunnel to rescue the Wingull, I have the move Rock Tomb on my moveset. This thing is able to learn Rock Tomb for some reason, but I'm not going to complain about it. It's going to serve us some much needed coverage. Plus, starting in Generation 6, Rock Tomb was updated to be 60 base power instead of 50, and 95% accuracy instead of 80. So this is actually a really decent rock type move. And you may also notice that I do not have updating stats and moves on my overlay. The Pokebytes software, which is what I use to show the updating stats, it is not compatible with the 3DS games. I'm sure I can find some sort of Lua script or something for Citra in order to make them show, but I decided for these, I'm just not going to have them. I'll just update the badges on the overlay manually, plus I'll just have the moveset visible at all times. I figured that would be more useful, at least for the live streams, so let me know what you think of this. I just wanted to have something on the overlay. Most of the story is still the same at this point, and then I eventually set sail to Dewford Town. Unlike the original games, you actually cannot skip Brawly. You have to actually beat him in order to talk to Steven. I'm not worried about this fight at all because we're immune to normal and fighting type moves, but let's still fight him anyway. He leads off with a Machop, and I go for Shadow Sneak, and he actually switches out right away to his Makuhita. That's because his Machop has no attacks that can even hit me, so that's the reason he switched. It doesn't even matter though, Shadow Sneak's going to be a 2-hit after he used his Super Potion. Although it ended up living at 1 HP, but all it went for was Sand Attack, which fortunately Keen Eye blocks. The Machop is 4 Shadow Sneaks, and I defeat Brawly and get my second badge. He still gives the TM for Bulk Up like in the original games. Even though I get Hone Claws and Calm Mind, we don't get Bulk Up, so I'm not going to be teaching this move. Now with the letter delivered, I end up at the beach south of Slateport. I pick up this little ether right here, and just before I go into town, I decide to fight all the trainers in the Soda House. There's a total of 5 trainers in here, which is 2 more than the original games, and I'll still get the 6 Soda Pop as a reward. The reason I do this training is because in runs past, I actually had problems against Rival 2, mainly his Combuskin doing way too much damage with Flame Charge. So I decide I should do the training here while I'm in the area, plus I'll get the free Soda Pop which I can use as cheap Super Potions. With the Soda House cleared out, I deliver the Devon goods to Captain Stern, and then I go into this little area with all these booths. There's actually a traveling TM salesman. He actually sells the TM for Hone Claws, which I get, although I don't immediately teach it. I originally taught this right away, but I'm going to get access to another stat boosting move really soon, which actually helps out in way more scenarios than Hone Claws does. Before I fight Rival 2, I fight most of the trainers in the general area, and I do the Trick House. The Trick House in the original games had a reward of 1 rare candy, but in this game it's actually a slightly different reward. You actually get the TM for Taunt, which is just complete garbage, but there's a Pokeball on the ground here, and it's actually the Expert Belt. This boosts the power of super effective moves by 20%. So think of all the type boosting items in the game. Think of it all combined into one, but it only gets the boost if it's super effective. And in most runs, you're going to spam the super effective move if you can. So this is actually a super useful held item. Unless there's another place I can get this, I'll probably always do this in my runs. But with this item, let's go take on Rival 2. Brendan leads off with his Wailmer. He has Rollout and Whirlpool. If he uses Whirlpool, that's actually kind of bad because it does chip damage every turn, but I take it out after 3 Shadow Sneaks. I'm also level 23 for this fight, and at this level, Shadow Sneak should be a 3-shot. Unfortunately, it isn't. I missed the range, but all it gets off is a Peck and a Flame Charge, and he tries to go for Sand Attack, but it ultimately fails because of my ability. And then last up is the Shroomish. It ends up paralyzing me due to its ability, but since Shadow Sneak always gets priority, I'll pretty much always be able to attack unless I get the 25% chance to not move, which I'm not really worried about. I fight the rest of the trainers leading up to Mauville, and then I enter this giant Mauville shopping mall-like building. Honestly, I actually really like the makeover Mauville City got. It just made it look like a gigantic strip mall, and I'm honestly quite happy with it. Before I challenge the gym, I get the Acro Bike. Theoretically, it doesn't really matter which bike I get. The Acro Bike gives me access to 1 rare candy. While the Mach Bike does get me an additional rare candy, it's in the Granite Cave, and it's honestly really annoying to get, so I just prefer the Acro Bike, plus it's easier to control. After I get the bike, I fight the trainers to the east. Since I have to pass through this area anyway to get to later parts of the game, I may as well get the experience while I can. Because in Generation 6, the experience formula has been updated. Well, it was updated in Gen 5, but the point is, the higher level I am compared to the opponent, the less experience I'll get. So if I fight these guys now, I'll actually get more experience than if I save them for later. And with these trainers defeated, I go into the mart right here, talk to this second guy, I make sure I sell some things to get $10,000, and here I can buy the TM for honestly one of the best moves in Generation 6, Power Up Punch. In X and Y, this is given to you by the fighting type gym leader, but unfortunately Brawly doesn't give that in this game, but you can just straight up buy it. It is a 40 power fighting type move, and it has a 100% chance to raise your attack by 1 stage. So if you just use this move once or twice on the first Pokemon, that's effectively using a Swords Dance with a bonus of doing chip damage. This also is going to be our key to defeating the 3rd gym leader, Watson. I go into this fight with a Cherry Berry because I don't need the Expert Belt because his first Magnemite has Sturdy and it's always going to get off a Thunder Wave no matter what. But when he uses a Super Potion and I just keep spamming Power Up Punch, all it does is just give me more opportunities to set up my attack stat. And when I eventually get past his Voltorb, which has Static, I get to his Magneton, which for some reason doesn't have Sturdy in this game, just the Magnemite, not the Magneton, and I one-shot it with Power Up Punch. So honestly, Watson might actually be somewhat trivial in this game if my Pokemon can learn Power Up Punch. Because in the original games, you're straight up not given any good moves to take on Watson besides maybe the HM for Rock Smash, because better moves like Secret Power and Dig were locked after his gym. But in this game, you could get Power Up Punch, you could use Rock Smash, at least there's more options for you. I was honestly surprised this thing learned Power Up Punch at all. I make the long and treacherous journey all the way up to Fall Arbor Town, fight some trainers along the way, and then just like in the original games, I go into this little crater right here to get a nugget, and then I can sell this nugget to buy super repels. When I was in Rustboro, I normally buy like 5 repels in the original games, but since you can use repels in the overworld when it runs out, I just buy as many as I can, and then when I buy super repels, I buy as many as I can. If I can avoid opening my bag at all costs, it'll save a lot of time. After I buy my super repels, I go into the Ruin Maniac's house and get the TM for Dig, which Sableye can also learn. This will be really helpful for Flannery. And then when I enter Meteor Falls, I have to take on Team Magma in a multi-battle with my rival. This fight generally isn't that hard, although I have had runs in the past where the Mighty Enna nearly kills me, but it's not that big a deal. And here's some other great benefits of this game. As soon as I finish with the Meteor Falls area, we go back to the professor's house. We're given the TM for SmackDown, which honestly doesn't really matter. Return is in Pacific Log Town instead of this guy, but anyway, I'm just rambling. One of the best things about this game, the rival just says, hey, you want to go back to Mauville? You can just straight up say yes, and then he'll take you back there, so you can avoid a ton of backtracking. In the original games, what I would have to do is backtrack through Meteor Falls down to Rustboro and into the Rustboro Tunnel where I get the HM for strength, but the rival just straight up gives it to you in this game, so it's a lot of really nice time saves. And now with this time save talked about, I can take the cable car all the way up to the top of Mount Chimney, and then I can take on the first Maxi battle. The Maxi or Archie battle at the top of Mount Chimney in the remakes and in the original Ruby and Sapphire is actually harder than the Maxi fight up here in Emerald. For some reason in Emerald, his Golbat's been downgraded to a Zubat. I guess that's just to make him easier, but in this game he has Mightyena, Camerupt, and Golbat. His Mightyena has Intimidate, so it does lower my attack, but if I use a couple of power-up punches, I can cancel out the Intimidate, but it also has the move Swagger, which can raise my attack by 2 and confuse me. I don't have access to a Lepa Berry at this point, although I could have access, I may have just forgotten it, but oh well. And then on the Camerupt, I can use Dig, but unfortunately I hit myself for a lot of damage. Fortunately, Earth Power doesn't hit you underground, and then I defeat it in one hit. I outspeed the Golbat, and it gets one shot with Shadow Claw. So now with the Maxi battle over with, we can go down to Lava Ridge Town and take on the 4th gym leader, Flannery. This is the one gym leader where her team is different compared to Ruby and Sapphire. In Ruby and Sapphire, she has 2 Slugma, but in this game, one of the Slugma is a Numel. It honestly doesn't really make a difference overall. The main plan for this fight is to use 2 power-up punches on the Slugma, and then sweep with Dig after I get +2 in my attack. This strategy does have its risks though. I actually had to start over a whole separate playthrough at this point, because Power Up Punch kept getting me burned because Slugma has the Flame Body ability. But fortunately, on the first attempt, I used 2 Power Up Punches, I don't get burned, and then I can defeat her Torkoal and her Numel very easily. Now I have 4 badges under my belt. This is normally the part where I would have to make the long trip back to Petalburg, but the rival just straight up says, hey, you want to go back to Petalburg? I say yes, and well, I'm already here, let's take on Norman. Norman in this game has a Slacking, a Vigoroth, and another Slacking. The main plan for this fight is just to infinitely spam Power-Up Punch as much as I can. There is a chance that the Slacking can use Encore, which would just be helping against him because I would just use nothing but Power-Up Punch. Although his first Slacking does have Yawn, which can be pretty bad. But unfortunately, I do get hit with it during this fight, and then on the final Slacking, I actually get confused. I hit myself twice, and I end up knocking myself out, so this is my 2nd overall reset. This was my first reset since Roxanne. On the next attempt though, I'm able to completely destroy Norman's team. So now we've got 5 badges in around 50 minutes. This is honestly really good so far. So now after this, Wally's dad gives me the HM for Surf, and then Wally just straight up takes me back to Mauville. So from here I can use the Pokemon Center and head my way up to the Weather Institute. But before I do that, there's a whole separate little mini quest where you have to get Latios to join your team after you defeat 2 Magma Grunts and Courtney. And then when you get the Latios, this thing is a really great HM user. This thing is going to be used for Fly, Dive, and Waterfall. I did catch a Zigzagoon much earlier in the run for Cut, Rock Smash, and Surf. And just outside of Mauville City, I caught the Geodude just outside of Mauville inside the little Rock Smash rock. I caught it for Strength, and that's the only purpose I have for it, because sadly, Latios does not learn Strength. I then go ahead and get these 6 citrus berries right here. I have noticed these citrus berries actually really come in clutch during this section of the game. I'm at the point where I should just consider holding one at all times because there are a lot of random fights that come up with fully evolved Pokemon, and with a Pokemon this weak, like Sableye, it'll actually help out quite a bit. And then I make it up to the Weather Institute, and as I'm fighting the Magma Grunts to get to the Tabitha battle, this Magma Grunt right here, he leads off with Numel. I actually attack it with Power Up Punch, and then he actually burns me with his Fire type attack. This was actually really bad, because I hadn't saved for a while. I didn't count on being burned. I use Power Up Punch on the Mightyena, I get hit with Swagger, but then I hit myself and I faint. If I didn't hit myself, theoretically, I could have still won this fight, but since I hadn't saved in a while, I actually had to black out. Where did I last save again? Oh my god. Once I eventually get back here, I do save before him, and I actually don't get the reset this time, so now we have to take on Tabitha. These random Tabitha and Courtney fights with just single Camerupt are actually kinda scary because these Camerupt have really great moves like Lava Plume, Earth Power, and Curse. So I have to be really careful here, but fortunately this Tabitha fight doesn't give me any issues. So now with the Weather Institute cleared out, I can just destroy the rival here, get the TM for hidden power while I'm here, and I can get the Devon Scope and go take on Winona. Winona only has 4 Pokemon in this game. She leads off with her Swellow, and what I do first is I use Hidden Power, which was honestly a mistake. I should have just used a Power Up Punch just so my attack can get up quite a bit, but I did use one right before it fainted, so now is the Altaria. Hidden Power Ice does 4 times damage and I knock it out, and then next is the Skarmory. I use one Power Up Punch, it hits me with Steel Wing, and I try to use Shadow Claw, but unfortunately it doesn't knock it out, but all it did was use Sand Attack, so I'm fine. And then on the Pelipper, it doesn't go for Protect turn 1, which is honestly the surprise of the decade, and I use Shadow Claw, and I actually knock it out in one hit. So okay, Winona wasn't that bad. In my first ever run with this thing in Pokemon Omega Ruby, Winona was one of the hard fights where I actually not only needed more levels, I also needed a plus speed nature. Her Swellow and Altaria kept constantly outspeeding me. And without the ability to see my stats on my overlay, I had to genuinely guess if I can even outspeed things or not. So now with Winona defeated, I still have to do a bunch of Team Magma plotline, although the ordering I do it is quite different than in the originals. As soon as I enter Route 121, normally I would go over to Lily Cove to set it as a fly point, but what I do instead is I go straight down to Mount Pyre, get this rare candy, and then I go up to the top floor of Mount Pyre where I can get the TM for Shadow Ball for later, and then I can go to the outside, and all the way at the very top, I have to fight Courtney here. She has also one camera, but this fight causes me so many problems. Let me go over the first battle with her. She sends out her camera up, I go for Dig turn 1, it uses Curse while I'm underground, and then as soon as I come back up, it hits me with Earth Power for a critical hit. I died to a crit on this thing, and since I hadn't saved in a while, I actually had to black out, and I had to go all the way back to Fortree City, go climb the tower again, and go back to Courtney. I do save before this battle though, just in case. I go for one Power Up Punch, Earth Power crits me again, Shadow Claw doesn't get the knockout, and I die. On the next attempt though, I go for 2 Power Up Punches, it uses Curse, and then Earth Power crits me again, and I die. Dude, what is with these crits? I couldn't even believe it at the time, just how unlucky I was being. On the next attempt though, I don't get crit with an Earth Power, but still, 2 Earth Powers does knock me out. This goes on for quite a while, until I decide to actually equip a Citrus Berry here, and you know what happened after I equipped the Citrus Berry? I use 1 Power Up Punch, 2 Shadow Claws, and I just win. I didn't even need to use my Citrus Berry. You, Courtney. So now with the red orb obtained, I get this little rare candy right here, and then I can fly straight to Slateport, fight a couple of Team Magma Grunts right by the submarine, and after this, I have to go into the Team Magma hideout. Captain Stern will actually give me a free boat ride to Lily Cove, which is why I don't need to set it as my fly point. And now that I'm in Lily Cove, I have to go up the stairs, but they actually moved the rival fight to just in front of these stairs, so this optional rival fight in the Gen 3 games is now mandatory. He leads off with a Swellow, which I take the opportunity to just use one Hidden Power followed by Power Up Punch. And then next up is the Whale Lord. I use 1 power-up punch for a quarter, I get hit to red health, my Citrus Berry from before activates, and now I'm at the Blaziken. I outspeed, go for Shadow Claw, and it one-shots. I denied learning Quash because, honestly, I don't even know what that move does. I haven't not heard of that move till recently, so I'm not even going to look it up right now. And then the Breloom right afterwards is a one-shot. Before going into the Magma Hideout though, I go to the 3rd floor and go buy some vitamins. Today's vitamin of the day is 2 Carbos and 3 Protein. I'm mainly relying on physical moves right now. I'm not going to go special until later in the game. And my speed stat is just horrendous, so I feel like buying a couple of Carbos was the way to go. So now I can go straight inside the Magma Hideout, go all the way to the end, and before I can fight Courtney in front of the submarine, I actually had to fight 5 Magma Grunts at once, because Generation 6 had something called Horde Battles, where occasionally in the wild you'll fight 5 low-level Pokemon at once, and this game takes that fact to Trainer Battles, so I actually have to take on 5 level 18 Poochyenas. And what makes this fight really annoying is if one of them uses Roar, it's going to switch out to one of my HM users, and it's just going to make the fight super annoying. You may think to yourself, why not just deposit your HM users? How am I going to surf to the Magma Hideout if I deposit my HM users? I mean, I guess theoretically, I could have deposited everything but Zigzagoon, and then Zigzagoon could just faint really quickly, but in my own rule set, if I get roared out, I have to switch back in as soon as I can, but eventually I do win this fight, mainly because they're all very low leveled. So now with the horde of Magma Grunts out of the way, I take on Courtney again. Fortunately it's a first try, and then I can leave the hideout and go straight to Moss Deep City. Here I can take on the 7th gym leader, Tate and Liza. Since this is based on Ruby and Sapphire, they have their original team composing of Lunatone and Solrock. What I do turn 1 is I use a power-up punch on the Solrock, just get an attack boost, my Zigzagoon dies, and I send in Geodude. I use Shadow Claw on the Solrock, and it actually goes down in 1 hit, and then Lunatone uses Psychic on Geodude, but due to Sturdy, it still lives. And then the second Shadow Claw will actually defeat the Lunatone, and I win. So yeah, this fight is still going to be relatively bad in most playthroughs, but if I ever do something that can't learn a Ghost or Dark move or Surf, this could be hard, but not today. After this, Steven Stone gives me the HM for Dive, and I have to go down to the Seafloor Cavern. But check this out. I encountered an Ace Trainer with a level 41 Pinsir. He actually defeats me with X-Scissor, and I didn't expect that. So I actually had to black out my Pokemon. I then decide to actually skip that trainer and then go fight this trainer right below him. But unfortunately, she has 3 Pokemon, including a Masquerain, which paralyzes me. I'm unable to move, I keep getting flinched, and I eventually get a blackout here as well. This was absolutely stupid. So next time I come through here, I try to avoid them, but then the Pinsir guy saw me again, and you can probably guess what happened. Once I actually get past him, there's actually a little spot I can use Dive on the east side of this route, and when I use Dive here, I can actually get a rare candy. And with the rare candy obtained, I go down to the Seafloor Cavern and make it all the way to the end of it, where I have to take on Maxie. This is the final battle with the boss of Team Magma, and he uses Mega Evolution, so I gotta be careful. He leads off with Mightyena. I go for Power-Up Punch turn 1, and he uses Scary Face to lower my speed. Hopefully that won't be an issue. Next up is his Crobat. I go for Shadow Claw, it outspeeds with Acrobatics. The Crobat lives in low health, it then crits me with Acrobatics, and then his Weezing is able to finish me off with Sludge Bomb after it poisoned me. So yeah, that was kind of an unlucky fight. On the next attempt, I make it to the Crobat. I get hit with 1 Acrobatics, and the Crobat actually goes down, so that was most likely just a range. I use 1 Power-Up Punch on the Weezing just to make sure my attack is good enough for the last Pokemon, which is Camerupt. It Mega Evolves, but fortunately, since it's a slow piece of I'm actually able to outspeed with Shadow Claw and one-shot it. Honestly, if I was playing Alpha Sapphire, Mega Sharpedo at this point would actually be super hard to deal with just because of how fast it is. The reason I do Omega Ruby is because for the Gen 3 games I do Sapphire and Emerald, I decided to spice things up a little bit by doing Omega Ruby. And now at this point, I have to go to the Cave of Origin, and I have to go to the Groudon at the end. In the original game, I would just run away from this fight, and then I'd be on my merry way, but I decided to make a little bonus rule just because Groudon goes under Primal Reversion, which I think is a really cool feature. I actually now mandate myself to actually take out the Groudon. This thing is actually super difficult, it's really powerful, but it does have one glaring weakness. It likes to use rest. The thing has random AI, and it can occasionally go for rest, and if you already damaged it, he'll be asleep for 2 turns, and I can use this opportunity to take it out with Dig, because as a fire ground type, this thing gains extra weaknesses. Unfortunately, I can't use Surf on it. Because of its ability, Desolate Land, it creates very harsh sunlight, which actually makes all water type moves do no damage. And now with Groudon defeated, I can take on the final gym leader, Wallace. This fight is relatively underwhelming because I'm usually very overleveled at this point. I can just use a power-up punch or two and then sweep his whole team with Shadow Claw, which is what I do here. And then afterwards he gives me the HM for Waterfall. And now at this point, I'm going to go all around the region and actually get a bunch of rare candies that I couldn't get before. The first one is in Petalburg City. The second one is on Route 108, just south of this start piece. The third one is on Route 111 in the Sandstorm area. The fourth one is on Route 114 above this waterfall. The fifth one is on Route 119 once I get past this little obstacle course with the Acrobike. If I miss any, you can let me know in the comments and I'll make sure to get it next time. But now I can go straight to Victory Road, make it all the way to the end, and I can take on Wally. Unlike the original game, he actually isn't a pushover, so I actually do have to be careful with this fight. His first several Pokemon aren't that hard, but he ends things off with a Mega Gallade. However though, with access to Power-Up Punch, by the time it comes out, I can just outspeed it, use Shadow Claw, and just one-shot it. So, Wally wasn't hard today. So now, I have access to the Pokemon League. I go ahead and heal at the center, buy some full restores and max repels, and now, I can take on the final 5 trainers. Let's do this shit. The first Elite Four member is Sydney. He leads off with Mightyena, which uses Intimidate, but since his whole team is weak to the fighting type, spamming Power-Up Punch will just completely destroy him, although I do come pretty close to death, but fortunately it's still a first try. The next Elite Four member is Phoebe. She's actually very annoying because her first Dusclops has Curse, and it can actually survive Shadow Claw from what I know, so I'm trying to use a Hone Claws here just to set up my attack by 1, but unfortunately this takes quite a few attempts, and I don't end up defeating her until 14 resets into the run. Another great thing about this is her ace is actually changed from a Dusclops to a Dusknoir. And now there's another team change. Coming up ahead is the third Elite Four member, Glacia. In the original game, her team was very not diverse at all, but in this game, she has 1 Glalie, a Celio, 2 Frostlass, and a Walrein. So her having Frostlass does definitely provide some much needed coverage. So I can't just spam Power-Up Punch the whole time. But for her Frostlass, I have Shadow Claw, so it's not a big deal. Now for the 4th Elite Four member, Drake. I use 1 Power-Up Punch on the Altaria, and unfortunately it hit me with Moonblast, and it actually lowered my special attack. This makes Hidden Power Ice not a one-shot on any of his Pokemon, so I get an immediate loss. On the next attempt though, I make it all the way to the Salamence. Even though it uses Intimidate, it still attacks me, but I'm able to live, but unfortunately my attack stat is not high enough to take out the Kingdra. So what I need to do is set up a couple of extra power-up punches, either that or just have more HP, but fortunately on the next attempt I am able to beat the Kingdra. So now all we have left is the champion Steven Stone. I have a Pecha Berry for this fight. He leads off with Skarmory. I use one power-up punch, he uses Spikes, I use another one, he uses Steel Wing, I use a third one, he uses Toxic, and then the Pecha Berry cures it. So at this point, I use Shadow Claw, and then next up is the Aggron. I use power-up punch here, but the Aggron has Sturdy, which is actually a benefit for me. I can actually get off the remainder of my power-up punches, so now I'm at +6 attack. And then on the Claydol, I can just one-shot it with Shadow Claw, as well as the following Armaldo and Cradily. Then on the Metagross, since Metagross became weak to Ghost and Dark starting in Gen 6, when the Steel type lost its resistances to it, I'm going to use Shadow Claw to one-shot, but I actually misclick and go for Power-Up Punch, and then Metagross outspeeds with Bullet Punch, and it actually knocks me out. Yeah, that was completely my fault. On the next attempt, I actually have very little health for the Metagross and I get knocked out, but then on the third attempt, I'm able to knock it out, and I have beaten Steven Stone at a time of around 2 hours and 6 minutes. However though, normally this is where I would end things with a champion, but I decided since Pokemon Emerald has some bonus content where I have to defeat Steven in the Meteor Falls, I decided to do bonus content for Omega Ruby. I'm actually going to end the run when I defeat Zinnia at the top of Sky Pillar. However, in order to do that, there's a lot of other things I have to do. In fact, during the credits sequence, I have to defeat the rival one last time, but even though I faint here, you're actually not required to win this fight, so I'm not going to count that as a reset. I'm just going to take the loss and move on. And then afterwards, in order to actually activate that final fight, I have to go all around the region to fight a bunch of random Magma Grunts, fight some random people, stuff like that. It's kind of a huge slog, so I'm not going to bother talking about most of it. I'm just going to go skip straight ahead to Sky Pillar. Before I enter it though, I actually have to defeat Wallace in order to prove that I can go in there. Fun fact, the team he uses here is actually his champion team from Emerald, with some slight changes. Mainly his Ludicolo doesn't spam double team and Leech Seed. So honestly, this fight here really isn't that bad, but it's a nice little Easter egg they gave him his champion team. And then with Wallace defeated, I can go to the very top of Sky Pillar and take on Zinnia. But first, I have to actually catch the Rayquaza. I can't just defeat it. But unlike Generation 5, where if I have a full party, I can just send it to the PC, Rayquaza is mandated to be in your party, especially in the first slot. So when I take on Zinnia, I'll actually have to switch to Zigzagoon, let it faint, and then I can do a fresh switch into Sableye. That's what I'm going to start doing in these playthroughs. So let's skip ahead to the very first battle with her. I have a complete moveset overhaul here. I have Calm Mind, Shadow Ball, and Hidden Power on my moveset. The main plan is on the Goodra, I set up as many Calm Minds as I can, because her Noivern actually will outspeed me no matter what and use Dragon Pulse, so if I could build up my special defense, I'll be just fine. So for the first time ever, I'm actually diving into my special side. But unfortunately, on the first attempt, I get a reset at Mega Salamence. I get a couple more resets, and then I realized I actually forgot something. I go all the way back to Lily Cove, and I actually get the TM for Rest. This is to make sure I have enough HP for the Noivern and the Mega Salamence, because the Mega Salamence can also outspeed me no matter what, and Mega Salamence likes to go for physical moves. So when I have Rest, and I come back to this fight, I make it all the way to her Salamence, I live at 8 HP, I defeat it with Hidden Power Ice, and Sableye has beaten the game. with a time of 2 hours, 40 minutes, and 7 seconds at level 71 with 22 resets. I know there's still the Deoxys fight, but I'm not going to end the run there since Rayquaza still pushed into the first slot of your party. Plus, it's just more thematic that the run ends at Zinnia, so as this plays out, let's take a look at what we've accomplished here. My leaderboard only has one Pokemon on it. I know I've done Cinccino and Charizard, but those were done such a long time ago under a completely different rule set. I'm just going to pretend those runs don't exist. I'll probably redo them at some point, but I don't have any plans on it. So right now, I've got first place on my leaderboard overall. But this isn't the last we'll see of Omega Ruby. In fact, later this week, I'll be doing this game with Mawile, the version exclusive counterpart to Sableye. I think it'll actually perform way better due to the Steel and Fairy typing, which is one of the best typings in the entire game, as you can see if you've ever played with Zacian. But yeah, I can't wait for it. Hope you're excited too. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more. And if you become a YouTube member, not only you'll get access to a bunch of emotes during the streams, but you'll have access to all of the patch files for every backport Pokemon we do on stream. So if you ever wanted to play, oh, I don't know, Mimikyu and Crystal, or maybe you want to play with Mega Glalie and Fire Red, well, you can if you become a member. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.